Hi, how have you
Hi.
been?
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. It's just been a beautiful, ever unfolding experience that we're living and in all sorts of ways. So yeah, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Some days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, sure.
but overall, yeah, overall great.
Good.
So glad to have you back on
Thank you.
the channel.
Yeah.
And yeah, so today I wanted to, first of all, whoever don't know Justin, he has a beautiful, I can say like podcast, right? Or how do you call it?
Yeah, yeah, we could podcast, conversation, all sorts of things. Yeah, we gather pretty regularly to discuss all things holistic. So whether it's body, mind, or soul related. These are the things that I love to talk about, and different avenues will pop up at different times. And um, yeah, that's what I love to do.
Yeah, I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Whoever didn't get to listen or, just yeah, basically listen, then it's like really recommended, even though it can be really long. So so you need to take a time, but yeah, it's really interesting as it comes to many topics. And today I wanted to also talk to you about the heaven, like yeah, like heaven and hell mindset is in like how we all tend to have this beliefs that according to the Bible maybe heaven and hell are only on different lifetimes or after we pass away. But I personally experience that as I'm shifting towards um I would say like a more positive uh, and like a lighter point of view in my journey, then I noticed that we can experience heaven in this lifetime. And I wanted to hear about your experience and what do you think that made what made like a major difference in your perspective on this topic.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and really, I think the first bit we've got to examine is, as you mentioned at the beginning, just this idea that's pushed onto us that heaven and hell are external places that we get to after we die, and this life is just sort of an in between moment. And these ideas are pushed onto us by the mainstream religions, which religions were all created to take this innate spiritual knowing that we have, because we're all wired to want to move back to our highest potential. So religions came along and they took that innate spiritual knowing that we have, and they twisted it in a way to create a better control scheme, to create a population that's more easily controlled by man. So religion gives us this idea that heaven and hell are external places, that this life is all that we have, especially from the traditional Christian reality. Many religions talk about this one life idea, and this life, maybe it kind of sucks a little bit, but if you do it well, don't worry, and if you pay your priest, don't worry, because you're going to go to heaven. But if you don't, then God's going to judge you and you're going to go to hell. So you've got these two polarizing ideas, either fear based or this sort of reward based reality, whereas none of them actually are true. Heaven and hell, and all the ascended masters talk about this, but I'm most familiar with the teachings of Yeshua, of Jesus, and he said the kingdom of heaven is within. So it truly is a space that resides within us, and he said this several times within the Bible. Yet mainstream religions ignore this part, and they don't talk about this, and people don't read it for themselves. But it's very clear. It's very clear to see that this all exists within inside of us. So truly, it's two states of being. we can exist in heaven or we can exist in hell at any point in time, just based on how we see, based on our perspective. If we want to live in a reality based on abundance, based on unconditional love, based on goodness. So God is goodness. God is the highest goodness. So when that highest goodness reigns supreme, when that highest goodness reigns supreme within us, when we are good to all, when we are kind to all, then creation responds accordingly. Creation responds in that same sort of heavenly state of being. It's a frequency, it's a vibration that we resonate at. And in the same way, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if we reside in that lower end of the spectrum, if we're operating in this victim consciousness, if we're always in fear, then creation responds accordingly, and we manifest have hell on earth. So we get to choose in any moment. And because we are certainly an individual experience having that, but we are also collectively bound based on where the majority of people lie within that space. If most people are manifesting heaven or hell, then that's what comes out in the external, and that's what we see in this external reality. So it truly is a choice in all moments. We are not victims to any reality. The victim consciousness is a lie pushed onto us. We truly are able to shift this at any moment, both in our own story and in the collective story all around us.
All right. And I wanted to ask you, how did you experience this different consciousness of once you felt like hell and once you felt like heaven? When did you start to feel the shift happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something that once I realized that this was the case, you can notice how in any moment I can shift between one or the other. So going back in my life, I saw at times where I was residing in that heavenly frequency and times where I was residing in that hellish frequency. Um, but being in an unconscious state, we sort of we're not able to step into the control room nearly as often. We're not taking, and that's just by taking responsibility that all of what I'm, because this is an inside out reality. So once I realized that whatever was happening inside of me was projecting out and creating my external reality, then I can take responsibility and say, okay, I am manifesting this. No one else is doing this to me. I'm doing this. So if I want to live in an external reality that is matching that heavenly frequency, I have to resonate at that, and then the byproduct will be that. So it happens. It happened to me in the same ways that it seems to happen for most, in that creation comes along um, and gives me these profound reminders that, like, okay, you're living in this hellish frequency and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to live in that reality when we are manifesting that the fearful reality, when we are staying in that victim narrative, when I am in this space where that hellish environment manifests in front of me. And this is kind of the way that creation operates. It's through these two forces playing with each other, and they're always in balance, but we get to choose which one steps into our life, and this is karma or this is dharma. So karma is the force within creation that is supposed to remind us that we are dipping into the hellish frequency. I am losing sight of the path. I am moving into this imbalanced state of being. And so karma comes along to remind us to move back into that higher frequency, move into that higher space of being, step into who I truly am, because I truly am an aspect of the creator. I just forgot. I forgot who I am. I forgot that I'm an angel. I forgot that I'm an angle of light. And so I fell into this experience, all to go through the journey of reminding myself again, remembering who I truly am. And so when I fall into that state of deep forgetfulness, karma comes along to help remind us, like, hey, you're falling into that lower state of being. You're falling into the potential where you can actually harm yourself or harm others. And so karma comes along to remind us, like, this is not the way. This is not, you're not in congruency with the harmony of creation. And I like envisioning this sort of musical way of portraying that, in that we're all playing the universe, the one song. So just as we're listening to music, and I think all here listening here can relate to loving a type of music, listening to that song that really gets you going. You can relate when you hear something that really soothes your soul and really feels that, you feel that resonance, you feel that harmony, you feel that beautiful symbiosis between the instruments played, you feel the wonderful feelings that arise from that. So that would be playing in that harmonious heavenly frequency. And then the contrast is when we hear instruments, or you hear somebody who's learning to play an instrument, or people who aren't playing so well, or maybe a children's band that are playing and everything's sort of out of tune and wonky. You hear the difference in that, and it's very discordant, it's chaotic. So when we are living in karma, when we're living in that hellish frequency, we hear the discordant tune and it's unpleasant, it doesn't feel good. And that's all to remind us to move back into harmony, to recognize the tune that's playing and either retune our instrument to play with whatever is going on in the background. And then when we move outside of that karmic influence, we move back into dharma, which is that feel good feeling of, oh man, this song is awesome. This song sounds so good to me right now. I'm got a pep in my step. I'm walking down the street. I'm dancing around, and that's the dharma. That's dharma saying you're heading the right direction, you're moving in the right way. This is the heavenly frequency. Stay in this space because you are aligning with your true self. This is our natural state of being. We are our birthright is bliss. Our birthright is bliss. So this is our natural state of being, to live in this harmony and live in this wondrous experience. But if we stray from that path, then we have the contrasting element to, not as a punishment, but just as a reminder to say, like, hey, you want to live in that highest vibration. You want to live in that most expansive reality. So let me remind you how to get back into that. The problem is people get stuck in that victim consciousness, that hellish reality, thinking that everything is happening to me. And that when I start to feel these feelings of discomfort, there's some, either there's some big bad punishing judgmental God punishing me for reasons I don't even know, or it's just some random happenstance and some scientific evolved reality that has no meaning to it whatsoever. Both of those are lies to sort of enable that victim consciousness, to get us to believe that things are happening to us, so that when we feel these karmic consequences, we don't act, we don't move into a space, back into a space of balance, to come back to that heavenly frequency. So then it sort of accentuates itself to where we just keep falling further and further and further into hell. And that's where we found ourselves today, is we lost sight of this very simple mechanism of creation to remind us to get back onto the path. We lost sight of the fact and the reasons why it needs to exist. And we fell into that victim consciousness, thinking that, oh, this is just random, or this is all happening to me and I can't do anything about it. When in reality, we are so powerful. We are so capable of shifting and changing and moving back into that space of balance at any point in time. We just have to act. We just have to step into that.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that is most that is like the hardest thing for us to shift is that there's a thing that people say, that it's better to be in a bed, I call it bad, but in like the bad and familiar, than try to move yourself from the situation that is not doing you well, and like doing something that is not familiar to you, even though you think or you feel like it's going to have a positive influence, it's going to make you move forward in your life, and maybe it's going to change your life. I think
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. And that's sort of the byproduct of when we let our ego step in control. So is our ego is not a bad thing. It's not something that's wrong or we have to get rid of. Our ego is simply like, I like to draw it, compare it to, it's like an autopilot program, and it steps in whenever we are unconscious, to help protect our body, to help protect this physical experience. But that's all it can do. It's only tapped into the physical experience. It's not tapped into the higher spiritual realms, which is where we come from. So when we are unconscious, then this ego is largely in control, and the ego, it fears change. It fears risk in general, and change always has some inherent risk to it. So if we're allowing our ego to be in control, then we're always going to fall into fear of change, fear of that risk. So for most people, this because society has conditioned us to always be residing in this sort of fearful egoic state, most people have never even experienced anything other than that. They have fallen so far into the identity of the ego that they resist change at every step and turn, and because the ego is commanding their experience. And it's not until we have this ego death, which is why in all of these ancient texts it talks about the death and the resurrection, the dying and being reborn, as so essential for spiritual evolution, because to truly live we have to die. Our ego, our egoic identity, what we've been experiencing, that initial bout of programming that was essential for the early stages perhaps in life, when we were a child and we weren't aware, we weren't fully able to step into our conscious being. There was a necessity for that ego to be in control, to help us to move along, to keep us alive. But at some point we have to say, I'm ready to fully consciously step into this experience, and I'm ready to run the show. And then that means that I have to let go of that egoic identity and have an ego death, and say, I'm ready to move, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to flourish, and I'm ready to take risks. Life is about risk. We're here to take risks, and that's the only way for expansion. That's the only way to truly grow, is to say, you know what, I'm ready to take this leap of faith. That's why that's such a profound statement. This whole idea of surrendering to the divine, surrendering to that highest will that's always guiding us. But in order to do that, we have to have complete faith. We have to have complete trust that I am guided by this highest will. I am guided by something far greater than what I can see from my limited senses. And so moving into that, I can take that leap and trust that even though it feels scary, a leap of faith is supposed to feel terrifying. It's supposed to feel intense to take that leap off the ledge. But I know, if I have that trust, if I wear that full armor of God, if I'm trusting in all moments, then I know that God has me. I know that this goodness, this innate foundation of unconditional love has me. So I don't have anything to fear except for fear itself. So going through that whole process, it really gets us to reevaluate that, okay, I was conditioned to identify with this egoic construct, and that ego is only going to exist in this form of stagnation and unwillingness to embrace change. And that's where I can recalibrate and reshift and start to embrace change, start to be excited for change, start to recognize that change, these shiftings, these movings, these winds of the universe, the winds in my sail are the things that move me along and propel me forward and get me to grow into an ever expansive way. So it does take courage. Creation definitely rewards courage, in order to overcome that initial fear, in order to step into our highest expression, because we truly are so powerful. So in order to reclaim that power, we have to be courageous enough to claim that. Creation is not going to have a sort of weak and fearful aspect step into its full power. We have to say, you know what, I'm ready to declare myself. I'm ready to step into this fully.
All right. Yeah, I feel that. I think that when we tend to struggle a lot in the physical world or in the emotional world, which is also part of the physical world, I think that as part of the traumas or like the failures that we've been through in the past, it might be harder to release this grip on the safety, on the safe side, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be very challenging to do that, especially when you have your friends and your family, everyone in our lives conditioned to this sort of egoic way of being, this sort of um, it's a false way of being, to be lulled into this sense of complacency to where I'm so afraid and unwilling to make any changes. So if we start to make those changes, if we're the first ones in our sphere of influence that is even making any changes at all, then all of a sudden we're ostracized from the group, which brings about a whole nother layer of fear that we have to overcome, that now I have to even do this alone. I have to do this by myself. I don't have anyone else, which there's a purpose in that, because ultimately this path can only be walked alone. This path, I can't have someone else do this for me. I'm not a victim that needs some savior to come along and do this for me. I can't have that. So I have to take that courage and step out on my own to do that. That's why it's compared to the straight and narrow path, because the wide and spacious path is the one that everyone else goes. In order to truly step into this higher expression and to move consciousness along in a way that is challenging and is growing, I have to be willing to step away from it all. I have to be willing to step away from the status quo, from the masses, and do it on my own. And that act in and of itself proves my strength. It proves my courage to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it does take a lot of it takes a lot of courage, and it also takes a lot of, faith in yourself that you are doing the right thing, and doing something that is better for your future or for even other people's future. And being the black sheep, around you is, I feel, because I'm also the type of person, and I feel that it's sometimes when you need like this physical connection, this physical support, it's really, really hard to find, right? Not to be in this victim state, but it's just, this is what happens when you do try to move out of this cycle, and you try to actually show people that there's a different way, and not letting the voices inside of their heads get into your head and tell you that you're just not going to make it. I've experienced in my life like things that I was so enthusiastic, I was like so passionate about, and I just heard voices around me saying like, it's too hard, you need to do this, and it's like, it's like you're going to struggle, and it's like it's always weighing you down instead of just giving you the support that you need. And the funny thing is that most of the time it comes from the people that you in your heart want to be supported by, like your family, right? Like your friends can be more supportive than your family, but still it's just, yeah. So I think that for me it really got into my head, but now the work of releasing it is doing good. It's doing better than before, but it's still like it's something that I need to overcome as well.
Well, and you are, and the only reason that you are overcoming it so powerfully is because that resistance was there. A sort of an easy comparison is strength training, right? Resistance training. So when we go through strength training and we want to build muscle, build strength, you have to have some resistance in order to build that strength, in order to truly have that strength with you. So that act of the challenge of your family and your friends, and yes, we've all been through those kind of things, it adds to the weight, the resistance, so that I can grow stronger, so that I can truly prove myself and prove my worth to be able to step away from that despite the challenges. And so by doing that, by being, of course, as we shift as a society, this will become easier for people to step into that. But for those of us who are courageous enough and bold enough to be pioneers, to say, I'm ready to do this now. I don't want to wait for the masses to catch up. It means that in order to step, it's a gauntlet. It's a true test of faith. It's a true test of strength. And all of our family and friends are in our life of old, they're acting as gatekeepers. They're acting as beings that are like, okay, are you ready to pass by this gate? I don't know if you've played many video games or aware of like the sort of video game structure, but it's very akin to that, of just like, in order to move into the next level, we have to overcome this challenge, we have to overcome this boss or this puzzle or whatever the case may be. And each level that comes along, they get more and more challenging to overcome, because each level leads us into a higher expansive reality. So in order to earn my ability to beat this level, I have to be putting my skills to the test, and I have to really get into it. It's not for the faint of heart. I might, in video games, you might die a few times in order before you get it right. So it might take us a few iterations before we get it right, but we learn. And then the next time I play that level, it's easy because I've already beaten it. So I know how to move through that one, and I can move into a higher one where the challenges are greater and the rewards are greater. And each step of the way in this sort of spiritual ascension is like that. It's like this continuous game that we're playing, where we're just leveling up each step. So we get to recognize that each being that comes into our life is perfectly designed by the divine to give us that test, to give us that challenge to overcome, so that we can step into a higher timeline, a higher reality. Everything is happening for us. There's no such thing as a victim. We're all here being augmented by this experience, and God is giving us exactly what we need in all moments, so that we can continually expand and step into our highest expression as aspects of the Creator, aspects of God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100%. I just yeah, I also wanted to mention that there are some tools that we can use in order to understand and like see the different figures in our lives and what role they play, because we can be angry at everyone, or we can try to see, is there something that I can change, like in my perspective or in the way that I approach this person, that can maybe change the way I feel or they feel, and then it can create like a better yeah, it can just create like a better communication and maybe more of an understanding and more supportive and environment. And do you have anything that you have learned to be like a helpful tool for, yeah, to find yourself and do something to shift your mindset towards this
Yeah,
consciousness?
sure. Yeah, there's lots of tools that have been helpful for me. I'd say the biggest one, the most foundational one, is the recognition that separation is truly an illusion. So we are all one. We're all aspects of the same. So anytime I get into an interaction with another being, to remember that I'm truly just speaking to myself in another form who's gone through a whole life of experiences. And so this kind of takes away from the ability of getting upset or stepping into this space where I want to harm somebody else, where I'm angry or upset. It doesn't mean that we can't be angry for a moment, but it just keeps me from being stable in that space, to where I stay on that space of anger, because I'm recognizing that, okay, this is another aspect of me, and we're here to have this experience together. And this individual might be here to challenge me in this way. It's here to bring me some form of awareness. So in that same note, recognizing that everyone that I come in contact is a teacher for me in some way, whether teaching me through contrast of what not to do, or teaching me through the what to do, through the flow of that. So everyone's coming along, no matter if it's just the person at the cash register who says something really nasty to me and pisses me off or whatever. They're teaching me in that moment. They're giving me an opportunity to see something within myself, an area where I was triggered, so that I can move through that, so I can learn to not be triggered in that moment. or someone who is teaching me a higher way of being, going deeper into more pure forms of food. That's a teacher for me as well. It's easier to recognize those kind of teachers, but the teachers that really piss us off, even if they're not consciously trying to teach us, they still are our teachers. So to have that perspective in all moments that everyone is here to teach me something, I'm here to learn something through every experience, every occurrence, just sort of helps to take that edge off from those experiences as well if I get so overwhelmed by what's happening. And if I need to take a step away, take a breath and go, go into meditation, just go for a walk, whatever the case may be, that's always a great thing to do, to sort of have that moment to really integrate and recalibrate. We're not here to always be in the mix of everything. This is an ebb and flow creation. The in breath and the out breath are essential. The blinking of the eyes, of the closing and the opening, is essential. There is this sine wave, a cyclical nature. This is the torus field that has the inward concentration versus the expansion. So when I need to have a moment to step away from all of the external influences and go into my meditation room, go on a walk, go for a swim, whatever the case may be, go listen to some music, then I should do that so that I can have that moment away from everything, and then come back into that experience when I'm ready. So that's been really helpful for me as well, just to give grace for myself in those moments where I might need to take a step away. There's nothing wrong with saying I need to take a walk right now. I'm going to go in the other room. I'm going to go breathe for a few moments. Even if in the middle of a conversation, you're like, I'm just going to take 3 deep breaths here right now. And then we'll come back to this. So that's really helpful for me as well. Another one is, I really love the book, The Four Agreements. I forget the name of the guy who wrote the book, but it's a beautiful book. It's really well.
Uh,
Do you remember?
I have this book. I think it's some Spanish name.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I
We
don't remember.
Yeah, I can't. It's for some reason it's eluding me at the moment, but yeah, the book is phenomenal. It's a really short read, and it just goes over these four agreements of and if I can remember them all off the top of my head, it's be impeccable with your word, always do your best, don't take anything personally, and the fourth one is eluding me as well. But the one I wanted to draw upon, they're all phenomenal. They're all phenomenal. The one I wanted to draw upon was don't take anything personally. Because when we get into this space of hearing what someone else says and taking it personally, then we're always going to be in that victim mindset. Truly, no one's words have any power over me unless I give them power. No one has any power over me unless I give them power. We are sovereign, perfect beings here in our individualized experience. So the only way that I'm ever relinquishing that power is if I willingly give it, even if I'm not consciously aware of where I'm giving my power away. That is the only way that I can truly do that. So if I'm taking someone's words personally, in that moment, I'm giving power away to those words. So to reclaim that power is just don't take it personally. Just recognize that what anyone says to me really doesn't have anything to do with me. I am simply a reflection of their inner reality, and they are expressing something based on their internal reality that I might remind them of, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. So I don't have to take it personally. I can use it as information. That doesn't mean I don't have to hear anybody. I can certainly listen and hear it, but I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to take that on and give my power away as if that's something that can change me or mold me or affect me in any which way. So yeah, just recognizing any layer of this experience going and interacting with others. Where am I giving my power? Am I keeping it within, or am I giving it away? So that's another really helpful tool that I find quite useful in my experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Like the don't take anything personally is I think really, really powerful tool. But I feel like even myself that like I don't know, today I woke up this morning, or it just happens to me when I go on social media, and I feel like there's a part of the old me where I see myself, and this part that I don't really like, that I just used to like not consider anyone else's point of view. Like I do consider, but sometimes it's just I feel like someone just wants to prove me wrong, or just you make a point. That it also happens that I want to make a point, but I don't want to prove anyone wrong. Like I really want to be open. And sometimes when I see someone responding into something that I wrote or to a video that I posted, and I immediately think of attack, like someone is trying to criticize me, and I'm like, I get so emotional. And then I read it like a few hours later, and I'm like, oh, it's not really what I thought they said. It's like, and I maybe took things the wrong way. And I noticed that when I see it also happening with other people, when someone don't agree with their point of view, or just, trying to see that maybe we are wrong and maybe we do have something to learn from someone else, is also, I think, really a thing to work on the ego, because we do take things personally, maybe because of the things we used to experience as well, maybe because the relationship we had with our parents, or the childhood we had, or just the mindset that we are maybe not good enough the way we are, maybe because we're different.
Yeah, and you said it well in identifying sort of the natural state of the ego, which is always going to be in that reactive state. So if if I'm so quick to react to some response, to some word that someone says, if I'm immediately reacting to it, especially from an emotional state, then the ego is firmly in control of my reality. Whereas if I'm able to respond to it, if I'm able to consciously respond, to take a breath and say, okay, you know what? Where is this coming from? What is this inspiring within me? Why is this bothering me? Even things that are naturally exciting, it's not always negative, but if I'm just in this quick reaction mode, um, without consciousness, then the ego is in control. So I have to reclaim that sovereignty and step back in and say, you know what, I want to be conscious in this moment. I'm going to respond to this. And then when we do that, when we take that split second, because that's all it can take to move from that reaction to that response, then again, no one has power over me. I'm not taking anything personally. Whatever anybody says to me is fine for them to say. It's just information. They get to say that. And I get to do what I like with it, whether discard it completely or take bits and pieces of it to put it somewhere to use for later. I get to choose what to do with that, but I don't have to do any of that. No one's forcing me. No one has power over me unless I give it. So yeah, it's a great thing to remember, this whole reaction versus response way of being. And that's an indicator, because people often ask, like, how do I know when I'm in my ego? And it's like, well, if somebody says something to you and you immediately get pissed off, you're in your ego. But if somebody says something to you, no matter what, it doesn't matter what they could say the most vile, nastiest thing about you or about anything, and it would have no effect on you because that's not you, and you're not giving your power to that. And so you can respond to it and say, well, thanks for sharing honestly about how you feel. I appreciate the honesty and you saying all these horrible things about me. I'm glad we're on the same page with knowing how you feel. But I don't feel the same way, and I don't need that information. So you take care, and I love you, but I'm gonna love you from over here now. I'm gonna love you from afar.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also really important to, as you said, like give yourself the space, give yourself the breathing, the time alone, also in order to, yeah, just to relax and tune into yourself, and just try and understand what's really going on. For me, I found that also what really helps me, besides of, you know, doing practices that are more relaxing and trying not to work too hard in like a regular job, even though fruits are really expensive and I have to pay for them somehow. It's just that when I walk outside now, I I notice that the flowers smell so amazing and everything just feels great. And I see this tree and I see like everything is just being so perfectly and harmoniously, everything was created so beautifully, and we tend to be inside of ourselves a little bit way too much sometimes, that we forget to see what we truly have around us, to yeah, just like, oh, even though clouds might not be real, but it can still be nice to have some shade sometime, if you're in a city, or just it can be a nice shape, or there's like always something positive I think you can see in everything. And this is maybe the reason why I wanted to talk about the heaven on earth, like mentality. Because for me, even when I live in a city, and my image of paradise would obviously be in a tropical forest next to the beach and drinking coconuts and doing nothing, just relaxing all day. And I find that even though I'm not in the situation right now, I can still enjoy other things around me, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you drew on a really important point, which is connecting with Mother Nature, connecting with the mother. So we have, of course, we tend to identify with our earthly mother and father, or which they're beautiful, but truly our divine mother and father are Mother Earth and Father Heaven. So these are our true parents. These are our true father and mother. So our mother is always there ready to embrace us and care for us. That is the divine mother. She's there to give us a big hug. She's there to say it's all going to be okay. She's there to remind us of the beauty within this space. And all we have to do is step into that. All we have to do is go examine a tree and place your hands on the tree, place your bare feet on the ground, whatever the case may be, feel the sunshine on your skin, anything within this natural feeling experience will be that mother's embrace to remind us that we are cared for and that all is okay. And so that's a great tool to use to step back into that heavenly frequency, because she is the one that leads us to him. It's always through her. So she's the one that guides us back. So in order to truly move back to him, which is the Heavenly Father, we have to connect with her. So the Mother Earth is a beautiful, beautiful example to step into in that. And yeah, what you mentioned as far as the heavenly frequency and manifesting that external environment of living in the tropics and hanging out in a hammock and drinking the coconut and enjoying the beach. And so this is by staying and envisioning that experience, that is the power of manifestation. So right now we are experiencing a reality where the weight of the world has been constructed and crafted to reduce our manifestational abilities and keep us trapped into this hellish experience, because we are all collectively connected. We're all connected to each other. And because the momentum has been for so long in this sort of hellish frequency of creating these cities that are very ugly looking and manufactured and dirty and polluted, and everything costs a lot and everyone's piled on top of each other and nobody's happy and everyone feels they're in this fearful mindset and scarcity mode, and all of that's trauma induced from the moment that we're born, even before, and it brings us to a space of creating and manifesting without even realizing what we have created. We've created hell on earth, and we've created it and we've lived in it. So the momentum has been against this natural frequency, which, as I mentioned, was this bliss and perfection, this true harmony. That's our natural state. But the resonant frequency of everything around us has been inverted against that. So we have fallen into this state where we've manifested this hell on earth. So while people might not feel immediately the effects of manifesting that heaven on earth by dwelling in that heavenly frequency, we don't realize just how powerful we are to truly heralding in and bringing in this new reality, this heaven on earth external experience. So by you holding that frequency, by maintaining that idea of I am on the beach right now, I am drinking the coconuts, I am experiencing this heaven on earth reality, you are helping to bring that in and bring that in faster. It is a collective experience, so it's not something that we can just immediately switch it and change it, though there are avenues that we can in a lot of ways. But just by having that effort, you're acting as that, you've got this rope and you're pulling everyone else along. It's like, come on guys, like it's so beautiful over here, and we keep going in that direction, and eventually we do get there, because this momentum is picking up. The cyclical nature of this experience is shifting back towards a reality where heaven on earth can be brought into this experience more easily. And just to look at it from a larger perspective, this earth goes through a grand cycle every roughly 26,000 years. And it goes through all 12 of the zodiac. Each of the zodiac lasts about 2,116 thousand years. So 2,116 years is about each cycle of the zodiac. And so the 26,000 year cycle that we're going through, we are just completing it. We're just completing one great year, going through all 12 of the zodiac. So we've shifted, if you want to look at this from a simplistic manner, it's a great year is akin to a regular year of the seasonal shiftings. So each of the four quadrants, each of the four seasons we've gone through. So we've gone through the full shifting. And right now, where we are in that, to describe it, we're leaving winter and we're coming into spring. So winter is marked as this sort of darker, more dreary time full of death and decay, or appearing so. Whereas spring, we burst into new life. So we're right on the edge of that winter changing into spring. And so naturally within that, everything, just as no matter what we try and did individually, spring would still come, the leaves would still grow, the flowers would still bloom, because the natural shifting of the earth is wired that way. Well, in a great year, the natural shifting of the earth's frequency is wired in that way as well. So we will shift out of this sort of dreary, dead state of winter and move into this lively state. So it doesn't really matter how we move into that. It's happening. It's going to happen. And which is amazing, because that means that everything within creation is going to augment that state of being that you're describing, of wanting to manifest that heaven on earth reality. So we're moving into that, whether we like it or not, but it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like sometimes I'm so pessimistic when someone says that. I'm like, you know. Yeah, but I also wanted to ask you, since you are like, you have a lot of time, and I think a lot of you've like explored, I can say, like you've been researching and exploring this all of this esoteric subject. I wanted to see, like, what is your point of view when there was like the story in Eve and Adam in heaven. So what do you think truly like is the metaphor or the allegory for when they ate the forbidden fruit and then they fell off heaven? What do you think like truly happened, or how do you see it?
Well, there's a few ways that we can look at this story. And I feel like these metaphors within these stories have different ways that we can interpret them, and different layers that we can read them. So on one level, this Adam is man, and it's man and woman is the initial point. Eve is the balance, and she's the counterpoint to provide the duality. So we have Adam and Eve as this balance, man and woman, masculine and feminine, light and dark. None of which are bad or good or any of those things. It just is. They provide this balance. And so from that experience, the trees that are presented, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of everlasting life, are both in the garden. And really the sort of God that is presented as commanding to not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil it's very possible that this whole story has been inverted in this way, and that the serpent in that story was actually the Christed energy inspiring them to step out onto the path of learning, and that the God who was preventing that from happening was actually trying to restrict them from this knowledge to keep them in a slave like state of being. um, so that's a perhaps controversial presentation of way of perceiving that. But if we look at the serpent mythology, it's not always a bad thing. It represents this kundalini energy within us, which is that this snake coiled 3.5 times within us that rises up our spine. And this is how we activate our fullest and highest expression. So if this serpent is representing that aspect of giving us an opportunity to step into a higher realm, um, and the sort of quote unquote God of that time is merely a controlling slave master that wants to prevent or keep that knowledge from being there, then that's where we were sort of cast out of the garden, in that way. So that's one way to present it and sort of look at it, which is, as I mentioned, sort of controversial for people to examine. But I find it to be quite possible, especially when you consider that most of the Old Testament has so many instances of Yahweh appearing in this sort of lower form of being, where it's like punishing and sacrificing and killing and judging and angry and wrathful. And so there's much evidence that most of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, was distorted to invert this polar opposite to God, Satan, a varied form, but changed the name so that we didn't know the difference, and we were pretending like, oh, it's just God all along. So that's definitely one way to look at it, which I find quite interesting. The Another way is just that we chose to eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil without balancing the tree of life. So we have to have both within us. So the tree of knowledge would be akin to our left brain. So this is us falling into this dualistic experience of knowing, through a mental perspective. The tree of everlasting life would be our right brain. That's our heart space. And so we fell out of our heart space. We fell out of that connection point, out of this everlasting life, to only eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to only experiencing from the left brain. And you cannot live perpetually without that connection point to the divine. So the tree of everlasting life would be this connection point to the divine, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil would be this pursuit of knowledge. So none of them are bad. It's not that we need to abandon knowledge. It's not that we need to abandon our mind, but just to recognize that there has to be a balance between these two hemispheres. We're supposed to find this middle path, this middle way. And that's why all these ascended masters taught the middle path, the balance point between the mind and the heart, the balance point between the right brain and the left brain, to live walking hand in hand, as the perfect balance between the masculine and the feminine, the mother and the father. So that's another reason why they were sort of cast out of the garden, and experienced death, was just in that same way that we experience death by stepping away from our connection point to this tree of everlasting life. We stepped away from the connection point to the divine, and chose to enter the death cycle. So it's all about coming back to the garden, to reclaiming that tree of perpetual life without losing this knowledge as well. We want to maintain a semblance and a balance of both of these realms. So yeah, that's another way to portray it. And then another fascinating one is examining the biting of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was viewed more in a sexual standpoint. Of this was the point where, both Adam and Eve expressed in an outward, sort of animalistic, primal sexual way, whereas the highest form of the sexual energy is this inward expression. It's much more easily noticed within a man, but we've been conditioned to have this outward ejaculation as if that's the way that we have sex. Whereas all this does is this drains our life force, is it expends us and expels us, because we are wasting the seed within us that's really supposed to stay within and raise up our spine. And this happens in both men and women. It's just easier to see in men. So that moment could have been an allegory where they were tempted to pursue the physical pleasure of the flesh, and pursue sex in this way where they were wasting and expelling the seed. And in that moment, we became addicted to that form of outward pleasure, and we fell into the path of death, and we left the garden. We left the path of life. So it's, again, just coming back. It's not that we're banished forever. We just have to reclaim our true sense of self and step back into that higher space of awareness. So those are three scenarios that I've come across that are quite compelling, and I think they all have merit in some way or another. Because these stories are supposed to be, they're not literal history books to be read as such. They're allegorical, metaphorical tales to give us a wider scope and a wider lens of how to examine this experience and how to step into our higher self. So I found value in all of those.
Yeah, wow, it raises so many questions. Uh, yeah, there's like so many questions now. But I still have like I've seen it. I have this point of view where if we do take it as is, do you think that it has to do with like, I don't know why, but I feel that as a woman, there is a really deep connection between how we feel, how much we suffer every month, you know? It depends on like what we eat. So it also helps us to shift from heaven to not so much heaven in our physical body. And that might also have to do something with it. I'm not completely sure. Like I don't think we can ever truly understand what it means, because it can mean so many things. And also what I wanted to say is that I've listened, like what you said about this is not being a literal story that is being told, is that I also listened to Santos Bonacci. So I've been studying astrology, like all the studying, and for a few years, and I've been following his work, and he keeps on talking about how much the Bible is actually telling us, obviously, about our temple, which is our own body and spirit. And he also talks about how astrology is also related to all of this, and how can, through astrology and Bible, like astrotheology, basically you can see the connection, and you can actually understand how the world works, and it can be so simple. What do you think about that?
Oh, Santos Bonacci is brilliant. He is one of the best as far as breaking down these astrological and physiological truths that are within all of these ancient texts, and seeing this. He teaches what he calls syncretism, which is that syncretic thread that weaves everything together. So it's all connected. We are the stars. We are the 12 zodiac. The Aries is our head, and the Pisces is our feet, and everything else in between. So this is just describing this process of falling from our head down to our feet and then coming back up again. So it's the process of falling and rising through this process, and going through the cyclical nature of the stars, going through the 12 zodiac, going through the hero's journey, the one true story, to go through all the toils and troubles that the hero goes through to stray far from home, to go wandering in the desert, to having to rescue the damsel, which is our innocence within, to bringing it back to completion, to marry, to the marriage and the balance point. And this is what we do every single year, and really every single moment, to just continue recalibrating ourselves back into that highest expression. So yes, the biblical stories are just representations of the stars. And when you start to really learn, and he does such a better job than I could, but you start to learn the signs and symbols, the key words and things that are expressed in these stories, to show, okay, this is alluding to this time of year, or this is alluding to this part of the story, based on the astrological signs that are represented and the references that are made in these stories. And yeah, so they have so much value to looking at them in this way. There's another yeah, yeah, Yes, it's beautiful to see it in that sense.
Yeah. It looked like you wanted to say something else, but uh, I also wanted to ask you about Jesus. Did it ever
About
happen to you? I don't know. It's like a blackout. Yeah.
yeah, it'll come as it needs to.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to ask about Jesus?
No. Oh, not about Jesus.
Okay.
Uh, but I did want to ask about how do you think that, oh, about how do you see that we are actually, not how do you see, but because I also come from a religious country, where I think most countries are religious. I don't know if there's any country that isn't basically religious, but I do see that also in religion, they had like a good intentions in the way that it was simply written, like you had the 10 rules where he was going um to Mount Sinai, right? And then he got the boards, then it said the 10 rules of do's and not to do. And also the way that we got everything, that it was so perfect. And then we started to take things and start to complicate them. And I don't think it's we, I think it's someone that is trying to gain control in the using of religion to distort what is actually saying, so people can say, but God said so, and no, I'm going to be punished, like if I'm not going to wear this long clothes, or if I'm not going to, you know they do some rituals, and they don't understand that sometimes that we do things that is like going against everything that nature as is telling us to do, just because a rabbi said so, or a priest said that we have to do this, and otherwise we're going to go to hell. Then I think that it's also creating the mentality of being fearful, and also not being able to think for yourself, because putting all of your you're putting all of your faith in, like, in something someone else says without questioning it. It's like this guy said that, and it's like I have to do it. There's like not trying to see if there's any reasoning. And it's also creating, like, if we live in fear, it's also creating fear within our environment and the way we see. And this is also part of the hell consciousness that we are creating, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I just remember if you want to find more sort of biblical breakdown in such a phenomenal way, one of the best channels out there is by this guy. Um, I think the channel is called William Donahue, but Bill Donahue is what he goes by. He's got such, I'm not sure if he's still with us any longer. These videos are quite old. Um, but they have a phenomenal way of breaking down these biblical texts and seeing the higher meanings within them. I've watched, I don't know how many of these videos, there are tons of them out there, but each one is just great as far as breaking down the astrological significance and what they were truly trying to convey in these things, and how modern day religions attempt to distort in most of, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They don't realize what they are doing when they do this. But it really does distract and take us away from the inherent meaning within that. So yeah, just describing the sort of rules and things that continually come up, and we have no better example than to look at Yeshua, Jesus, and the ways that he confronted the Pharisees whenever they would try and come to him and say, "Oh, you're not following this rule on this day, or you're not doing this in this way," and he would have such perfect things to say back to them, to say we're not living in this reality. We're not worshiping these rules as if they're the end all be all. It's a true knowing of what is good. And so that's where, as soon as we start to, you mentioned the laws and the written word, and while there are many instances where the initial attempt to write laws is for good. Um, Anytime that we try and define law, we're actually stepping away from our inherent knowing of what is right and what is wrong, because we know this at our very core. We don't need anything to describe it. We don't need anyone to tell us how it is. We know what is right and we know what is wrong. But as soon as we start to define this in written form, have this legalese stuff, which we see today has expanded into this whole nonsensical system where you have to have lawyers and this convoluted, complicated justice system that doesn't make any sense and isn't about justice. It's just about money and just about corruption and all this other sorts of stuff. That's where we fall to as soon as we start to define these laws, because God's law is known. We know this. We know that it's wrong to murder somebody. It doesn't matter if I write this in a book or have this on display or put this out there. I don't need that to know that murdering somebody is wrong. So as soon as I start to define that, then it introduces the whole loophole aspect of people trying to find other ways to define laws or create these really convoluted, complicated ways to describe things. So, oh, this is illegal to do on this day and this time, and all of that just creates more confusion. And in that moment, we are giving our power to written word, to man, instead of giving our power to God, because we know this. So they often criticize Yeshua for performing miracles on the Sabbath day. And it's like, yes, there is the Sabbath, which is a great practice to follow. It's great to have a time in life to where we slow down, where we either introduce fasting or we introduce some form of slowing down from just a regular everyday noise. So whether it's going to the beach and going and being out in nature, or reading a book, getting off social media, whatever the case may be, to have a day in the week to step away from all that is a phenomenal practice, because on the seventh day he rested. So this is, again, this allegory to show like we should rest on a day, like give ourselves a break. But it doesn't mean that we have to be so rigid and say that, oh, if you do this or this on this day, you're illegal and we're going to throw you in jail or we're going to fine you. Like that just gets so crazy to think that somebody can step in and enforce this and force somebody else to act in a certain way. When really naturally we are so inclined to this. So we don't need anyone telling us these things. We don't need anyone enforcing these things. It really is simple. If we're going to define anything, it's cause no harm. That's the only law that we need. Just cause no harm. Do whatever else you want. Just don't cause any harm, and you're good. And if we have that as our foundation, then there's never anything that comes along that presents anything. People can go about their business and do what they want, as long as they're not causing harm. Then whatever. Like, it's not for me to judge. It's not for me to judge how somebody wants to live their life. If they want to, if they want to pursue their life of eating fried foods all the time, okay, they're not harming somebody else. They're harming themselves, but they will feel the repercussions of that. It's not for me to enforce. It's not for me to imprison them or lock them up or ban French fries or whatever. Like, I don't need to do that, because the natural consequences of nature will kick in and that person will not feel well. They won't live very well. And hopefully they'll learn that maybe I don't want to live that way, but it's not for me to judge. It's not for me to enforce. So it is this like, this byproduct of this, you mentioned this sort of controlling, scheming paradigm of those who can't help, seemingly can't help, but try and control others. They have to create these convoluted, complicated legalese systems to try and tell other people what to do. You have to do this on this day. You have to pay these things at this time. You have to do this in this way. And it's like, no, get out of here. Like, we're all sovereign beings. We get to live how we want to. If you want to live that way, great. Have at it. As long as you're not harming me, I don't care. But as soon as we start to take over, like step outside of my sovereign space and try and demand somebody else live a certain way, then we're falling into that controlling scheme, and we're stepping away from God. Even in that moment, I really like another great way to sort of summarize morality, summarize God's law is just don't steal. This was said by Mark Passio, I think is a great teacher in a lot of ways. I don't agree with everything that he says, but don't steal is a great way to summarize morality. Don't steal someone's lives. Don't steal someone's liberty. Don't steal someone's property. Don't steal. As long as you're stealing, you're doing wrong. If you're not stealing, you're okay to go. Do whatever you like. Just don't steal. So in that sense, when we try and define laws that make somebody else do something else, in that moment, we are stealing their liberty. We're stealing their sense of life. That's wrong. So even by defining laws, I am committing wrong against creation. I'm committing some sin, quote unquote, to hinder the natural creative expansion and flow of this free will experience. So it is it's something that we've certainly gotten into a lot of mess with it. And I'm not saying that we can immediately just abandon all sense of that now, because we've sort of become accustomed and addicted to it. But we will be working our way away from all of these convoluted definitions and getting back to the simplicity of just like, okay, do your own thing, have at it however you want to. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do it however I want to, as long as I'm not harming you or affecting your space or harming any beings. This includes the animal kingdom that we're here to act as custodians over. We're here to act as stewards. But as long as I'm not causing harm, then I'm good, and you're good, and we're all good, because we're all good at our very core. We all come from that inherent goodness. There is nothing that relieves that, other than this twisted idea that I can convince myself that somehow I'm not of goodness, which is false.
Yeah, that's true. And you also like mentioned now the fact that is like there's no harm, and we're to be custodians of like the animals, but some people see it as like God told us to. It's like it's just an example of what I said before, is that we took something that is written, and we decided to say something that make us feel better with our consciousness, as like, okay, so God told us to control and domineer all the animals on the earth. So he puts there for us to, to eat them and kill them, because this is how nature works and all these things. And it's eventually also the understanding is that once you harm someone else, you're actually harming yourself, if you are aware of or not aware of it. It comes from something that it might be deeper than, just actually believing that this is how you need to act, because most people won't be able to go and harm someone else and kill someone else. They think it's mental to do it, but they're still paying for it because they have been brainwashed into something. And this is also something that I see in the religious thing. In here in Israel, we also have kosher and non-kosher. If you know about it, and for me, it's like when I look at it, I'm just like, what difference does it make? They're being paid to put a label, and then they go on their own life. There's like in the Bible, there's nothing kosher about killing someone, right? It still is causing suffering.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I described the potential for much of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, to have been inverted, because this leads to confusing passages being described of where God might advocate for sacrificing of animals or things of that nature, which goodness never does that. And you said that foundational point of recognizing that we are all connected. So as I mentioned before, separation is an illusion. So there is nothing separate from me. There's nothing separate from you. There's nothing separate from us in this experience. And so if I'm causing harm to any layer of that, then I am causing harm to myself. So the only way that I can even convince myself to cause harm or to allow harm to be caused to another part of me is if I don't believe that it is me. If I believe that it is truly separate. That's the big lie, the disconnection point. That's, you can sum up all roots of pain, suffering, this hellish experience, it all comes down to disconnection. We are disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected from God. So cultivating that connection comes back, and it naturally takes care of that, because there is no animal out there that willingly gives itself to be murdered and killed. None of them. They're all running away. They all don't want that to happen. They all express their emotions in that way. They're all very intelligent in what's happening. Yet somewhere we just think, oh, that's okay. I can just ignore those very clear signs and go forward with this act. But I can only do that if I'm separating myself from this. So if I come back to that connection, then there's no way that I would ever harm anything. And then it comes back to the natural recognition, like, oh wow, here's this perfect fruit tree that's begging me to take this. It's like literally dropping from the tree branches saying, here, please take this, please enjoy this, please consume me. If you don't, I'm just going to drop all over the floor, and that's okay. You know, it's not a big deal, but I'm asking for you to do this. I'm asking for you to spread these seeds. I'm asking you to enjoy this. I'm wired to be attractive to you with these colors and these tastes. So that just shows us, like, where is nature leading us to? What is our natural state of being? There is no harm. There's no taking. There's no stealing there. It is a giving. It is an offering. So when we come back to that state of connection, then we recognize where in creation that is emulated to us, and where these offerings are provided freely, abundantly, without any taking, without any stealing needed. It's just a true gift in that sense. But we only get there when we start to connect with ourselves and start to connect with this knowing that we are all connected. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully we are. Yeah. It's just, yeah. So the thing is, like when I said, when religion is actually showing us that everything is everything is perfect, and we just deviated from what is being basically told, from what is being created. And I also have this saying that once you don't, it's like it comes to food eventually. Is when I see also a lot of religious people, and they claim to believe in God, and they need all of this, all of the, all of these costumes, and the way they dress, and how many prayers they do in a day, and eating kosher, and not being on the phone on Sabbath, and not going on your car, and not, like, basically not getting out of the house. And they forget that there is a lot of disbelief if you think that you need to cover your body so much and not, like, not expose it to the creation. Like, you cannot feel the wind, you cannot feel the sun. It's like it's not touching you, and it's basically also disconnecting you, as well as cooking your food, which is, it's not a demonic thing, it's not like a bad thing, but I'm saying is, like, if you really do believe in it, don't you believe that everything is created, like, it's so simple, and it just made everything for you to also enjoy it very easily. It doesn't work you to work this hard. Maybe the hard work you will do is like climb the tree and take something. It's the hardest thing you will do, or walk from tree to tree, or from a land to another land. And yeah, it's also something that I've noticed, like, the past few weeks, because I hear a lot of, like, religious people are coming to me and say, maybe you should cover your shoulder, or don't walk with your belly exposed, or like, I mean, I think that the way of showing appreciation is just looking around you and just being simple and be grateful for what you have, instead of just looking at what you cannot do, and being scared of what it's going to do to you. It's not going to do anything to you if you expose your shoulder, or you show your face, or you grow your hair it's, or married women here, they cover their hair. And then, like, what happens when you cover your hair? You're basically you're trying to, it doesn't cause any good if you cover your hair. It's like, if people cannot control themselves because your hair looks nice, maybe there's a big problem. It's not because God told you to cover your hair. It's just because there is a distorted point of view in the environment where you are. It's like what
Yeah.
we created as humans, not we, but the controllers of the human, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, you start to peel away and see the truth behind why this was all crafted in that way, and it's all to take us away from the simplicity, that the truth is simple, the lie is complex. So sometimes stepping away from that lie can be a complicated process, but really the truth is simple. The truth is so simple. And to have these ideas pushed onto us to get us to be ashamed of our body, and to see it only as a sexual object instead of just a natural inherent thing that we all have. Where did that come from? This idea of shame, that we have to be afraid of how we look and see things. That's all pushed onto us, and by this as you mentioned, this control mechanism, that we are somehow we are worthless sinners, and so we can amount to nothing, and all we do is wrong, and it's always a problem, and we're damned to hell, and unless we follow this book and pay our priest, and all these things, which you can see the problematic effects that has even in looking at religious priests, especially in those that are forbidding of the priest to become married or to have relationships or to have children. And you see how that creates a problem where those priests end up a lot of times raping the innocent children. So that innate desire for connection is squashed, and that shame is placed onto them, to where they're but it's still naturally within us to have this connection. And so that it eventually bubbles up in a very unhealthy way. It eventually comes out in a very, very harmful and drastic way. So it's not the answer to have people cover up or to shame people for being in this space, but to truly, like you mentioned, draw upon what's the bigger problem here. What's the root cause of why this is leading for men to rape women because they see something like that? Why does that happen? Where do we get to this problem? It's not to have women take responsibility for that, but to address what caused us to get to this space. So we're always looking for this sort of shortcut solution that doesn't work, a band-aid to put over it by telling somebody to dress more appropriately or whatever. But the root cause doesn't get addressed, and the problem only gets worse. The problem just gets worse and worse and worse. So we got to reevaluate our whole thing, and come back to taking responsibility of, like, okay, this desire exists within me, and I have to address that in a responsible way, but not push it away. And as a society, we can talk about these things openly instead of having this be like a taboo subject that nobody discusses, nobody speaks about. And that creates more problems because nobody's even talked about it. So people are like, what the fuck do I even do? And then I have access to this internet or whatever that's always thrusting like pornography and things in my face. And that creates all sorts of issues as well. So not only am I not allowed to talk about it with my family and friends because nobody wants to talk about it, but I have this whole perverted reality pushed onto me that's feeding that innate animalistic desire. So it just creates a whole dichotomy of trouble. Whereas if we just were staying connected and having these conversations from the get-go, we could address, okay, this is where this comes from. We are innately wired to connect, but how can we connect in ways that are harmonious and not in ways that are taking and trying to steal from someone else? How can I connect in ways where it's augmenting each of us, where everyone is winning in this space instead of somebody losing and somebody winning? How can I get to that area. And that's, again, going back to the initial conversation around karma and dharma. How can I step into that harmony of this one song? How can we harmonize together? How can I recognize, oh, you have a violin, I have a saxophone. How can we play these instruments to play with each other instead of playing against each other? Even though they sound way different, they're played extremely different. But how can we play them together? How can we play the same song together? Recognizing the differences are what makes it so special and what makes it so magical. Whereas society is crafted to have these the violins against the saxophones, and you can't, how dare you play it that way, or how dare you even try and harmonize together? It's like it's so messed up, but it's so, there's a gift in the contrasting lesson. It's not to fall into the victim that, like, oh, we can't do anything about this, but just to say, okay, we fell to this point so that we could learn from it and come back to that and rekindle that connection and play the greatest song that we could have ever possibly imagined through all of these trials and tribulations. And that's the point of it. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's this the lady who came to me and told me, like, to cover, cover my shoulder, cover my belly. It's like, oh, God is only going to send you good people if you cover yourself. And I'm like, if this is like what I need to live by, then I'll probably never find a good man, like maybe I'll stay single forever. And I see that, like, people really let it get into it. It's like, why are you so stressed about what's going to happen to me? I think I'm going to be fine. And for me, I just don't like to get into these arguments with people I see, because sometimes you see that if you're going to say something, it might hurt their feelings because they have such of a strong belief in something, and you need to see them over and over again, and maybe it gets a little bit uncomfortable to, like, have a nice conversation, because they might not feel like their opinion maybe matters, or so sometimes I feel like I just have to go with the flow. And I don't like doing this, because I really like to state what I really think. And even if it goes against the flow, it's really easy to do it on social media, because it's social media. You don't actually meet all the people you talk to, and you can even go to more people, and it's not just like one person that you have to deal with all the time. I think it's also part of the limitations that we also have inside of our head in towards confrontation. And because this world really works a lot on money, this is what we created as people. We created money, and so we let a lot of what happens in the world be dictated by how much money we can have inside of our pockets, or just something to serve us in the future, right? I can find another job, I can do anything else I really want. It's just a question of how much am I willing to sacrifice for getting there, to
Yeah.
get into this, liberation.
Yes, exactly. It is a I like to use this sort of metaphor of the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, as a way to kind of have fun with that experience. And so, have you seen The Matrix before? Seen those movies?
I have watched it, but I believe we were around the same age. I think I saw it in a movie theater when I was around 10. I think I was not even 10, maybe. Yeah, so I saw it first time when I was really little, and I didn't really understand what happened. And then second time, I watched it, like, I think a decade later, or even twice later, and then I started realizing exactly what they're trying to tell us, while I started also, like, researching about what is really happening, like everything we weren't being told that is actually happening. This is what they're telling us all the time.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's like Keanu Reeves says, The Matrix is a documentary. Of course, it's not literal in the sense that we are trapped in these pods, but in this falsely created reality, with all the inputs given to me by society, I am living in a false reality. I am plugged into the Matrix. And then once we take the red pill, which is that point where we're saying, I'm ready to step away from the matrix, I'm ready to step into reality. That's that moment where Neo wakes up and realizes he's in a pod, and he has like a feeding tube in his mouth, and he realizes the horror that is. Um, but that's not the last time that he goes into the matrix. At that point, he still plugs back in and goes in to do certain missions, to go complete certain tasks, to meet certain people. So there is a purpose to the matrix. There are still things of value that we can gain from it. As you mentioned, having a job, finding ways to support yourself and whatever the case might be. Of course, we want to move away from that eventually, but in the meantime, while we still have to deal with that, we have to do the best with what we can. So what I like to envision is anytime I have to go into the matrix, whether that's even just going into the store to buy something, I envision myself as Neo or Trinity or whomever, and I have to suit up and go into the matrix. I have a mission. I've got to go complete something. In that time, I don't want to disturb too many of the Agent Smiths, which, if you're unfamiliar with the movie, those were the programs that came in to try and fight out
Yeah.
this Neo or Trinity or whomever. So I have to be conscious to not alarm and alert too many of the Agent Smiths in the Matrix, because it just creates more problems for me. I'm sure we can all relate with when we were encouraged to wear masks everywhere we went to and go to the stores. Yes, there are times where it was important to stand up and say, you know what, I'm not going to wear this mask. And at the same time, I'm not going to go around and try and tell somebody else, like, you realize that's harming you, and you realize you can't breathe with that, because that's likely just going to inspire their programming to really get upset and really become triggered and come after me and create more issues than I really wanted to deal with in that moment. So to kind of move about that strategically in a way to where it's like, okay, I'm going to suit up, I'm going to go into the matrix, I'm going to get what I need, but I'm not going to cause too much of a stir. I'm not, because it just ends up becoming more of a challenge for me to deal with. And I don't really want to have to deal with all that. So having that perspective in every moment, whenever we do have to go into the matrix, even if we're doing a job, okay, I'm going to be here and I'm going to do what I need to. If I find someone who is like on the verge of coming through, then yeah, I can talk to them about this, but I have to feel that out respectively. I have to gauge whether they're actually open to this information or not. And it's even referenced in the Bible. Yeshua talks about, don't cast your pearls before swine. So recognize that what we have with this newfound awareness of what's happening and how things are configured, and the fact that we have been lied to about so much, don't cast those pearls of wisdom of that knowledge before swine. And that's not to be mean to call anybody pigs, but just to say that some people are not ready for that. So I don't need to be wasting. Then the following line is, don't cast your pearls before swine, for they'll be trampled underfoot. So don't cast my value to someone who's just going to waste them. I need to recognize who is actually able to receive what I have to share. Because if I waste them to someone who's not ready, not only is it going to waste my energy, but it's usually going to antagonize them to the point to where they're going to become angry or try and stir up more issues. So that just causes more trouble for me and for them. So I have to be very conscious and recognize, where am I able to cast these pearls and where are they being received, and not waste my time and effort on anything else. So those were two things that kind of came up for just sort of navigating that space as we're manifesting this heaven on earth and stepping away from this matrix reality. We do have to move about it strategically. It's not always guns blazing. Neo didn't go in all the time with, firing guns every which way and causing a huge ruckus and trouble. He did if he had to get out of situations, but it wasn't something that initially started out with. He would go in with a disguise. He would go in sort of undercover in order to get what he needed to do and get it done. So that's what I like to relate with, and it sort of makes it fun to have those experiences too, and we can laugh about it when the Agent Smith pops out and somebody yells at us for doing something or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm sorry. I'll see you later. And just kind of have a fun time with it, because it's a silly experience when we look at it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So we need to play the game as much as we possibly can. Like for me, it's okay, in my natural state. For me, I'm like, as I said, I always like to go like straight, and I don't care what's your opinion. Like I don't care how you feel. It's not like that I'm not sensitive. It's just that I'm just being honest. This is like I'm just being honest, and this is I don't know. This is me like showing that I care.
Yeah.
And this is my nature. This is like I'm an Aries, so for me, there's like I'm too blunt sometimes, and it's really hard for people. But it sometimes can be really hard for me because I know that not everyone can deal with it. And yeah, it's also part of like, okay, I'm just going to play the game. It's just temporary. It's just a few minutes, and then, just in my mind, I'm not going to be sorry for not saying something, because it is going to waste my energy, and maybe it's going to make them think, maybe it's going to plant a seed in a way. And yeah, like I don't fear it. It's just that I feel that I can put my energy on other things that are going to be more effective, or maybe change the way I approach these people, and trying to ask them questions and really check out how much they try to open their minds and just
Mhm.
see how their point of view is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole and start being pissed off because they don't understand me, and yeah.
Yeah, and it always comes back to where we're called to in every moment. So there's no one formula that shows up in every single moment. Sometimes we're called to be sometimes we're called to stir the pot. Sometimes we're called to say something boldly and declare something in that moment. And if we're truly receiving that divine calling to do that, then yes, we go at it with gusto. um, and there are times when our ego is trying to inspire us to cause a scene and cause trouble and prove someone to be wrong, or tell someone that they're wrong about doing something. And so when that happens, then it's my desire, my egoic desires leading the way in that moment. So it's a sensitive thing, and we have to be conscious of where these feelings are coming from. Am I angry, or am I just trying to prove something to somebody, or is this really something where I'm feeling called from a higher source to speak in this moment? And if I'm not sure, then maybe it's not time to speak. Maybe it's time to just observe and see what happens. And like you said, ask those questions that might be. There's nothing wrong. People have it's often termed the Socratic method of asking questions to describe something. If we're asking questions, asking how somebody else feels about something, oftentimes then we let them come to the answer themselves. And if they don't want to go there, then they'll say that. They'll answer that, but they won't feel threatened by you telling them this is how it is, or this is how it should be. I'm asking you. So if you don't want to answer it, okay, that's okay. Then here we end the conversation. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is also part of the creating the heaven consciousness, like trying to focus your energy on the positive and what's going to lead you towards a better, yeah, it's just like maybe a better version of yourself. And this is how you can project it on the environment and your, obviously, manifestation, like how you manifest it into the world, and it can help you where you see, like where you, yeah, where you actually see yourself and where you want to see other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not always people have this idea of like positive, we have to keep always positive, we have to keep always our focus on the love and light. Sometimes sometimes we are invited to look at the sort of darker elements. Sometimes we are invited to look at where we need to grieve something, we need to experience some sadness, we need to go through some layer of healing, but all of that's aiming towards that highest goodness. So to recognize the full range of this experience and see whatever is being brought for me to look at is perfect in that moment. And so I don't need to ignore anything. Just continue seeing the silver lining in whatever happens. Why am I going through this experience? What am I here to gain from it? Not that I need to know all details in every moment, but just be open to the trust and faith that yes, I am being guided by some higher source. I'm being guided by my higher source to bring me to that space of more complete awareness.
Yeah. Trusting what happens, and not,
Yes.
I mean, it's okay to be sad and mad, and it's part of who we are, it's part of our emotions. And it's just understanding that the uncomfort, that don't go our way is just here to teach us some kind of a lesson. And
Exactly.
it's all a blessing. I think that I've been through so many hardships that people look at me and they're like, you're so young, you haven't been through shit, and it's like, how do you know? What do you know? What do you know what I've been through? And I feel that what I wanted to say is that people always tell me when I tell them about what I've been through is just like, oh wow, you poor girl, and like, oh, it's probably so hard. And I'm like, it's okay, like, I've been through it, I've learned what I needed to learn, and I'm grateful for this experience as well, because I cannot change it, and it brought me into a better future. Like, I never thought I'm going to be doing what I'm doing, or being in a position that I am at this moment, this very moment, if it wasn't for this unfortunate, happenings, for the not so positive experiences that I've been through.
Exactly. Yeah. We wouldn't be here without all of that. And to have gratitude. I mean, gratitude is like um, it's like the cheat code of this experience. If we can stay in gratitude in all moments, then we're winning all the time. Even if I'm experiencing some immense sadness, I can be grateful for that experience to say that somebody passes in my life and I have an intense bout of grieving. Wow, how grateful am I to have a connection so deep and a feeling so deep that I get to feel this in this way. How boring of an experience would this be if I didn't have that, like just for the simple sake of that. So to come back and take every moment and come back to that gratitude. Somebody pisses me off in that moment, somebody cuts me off in traffic or says something nasty to me on the street and I get angry. I'm grateful for that experience because wow, that's showing me a layer of myself that I can look at more deeply that I hadn't been aware of before that experience. So to bring everything back to that state of gratitude, it's easy to be grateful when things are seemingly good, when it's all rainbows and butterflies. But to even be grateful in those moments where it is extremely challenging, where it's hard to go through, to be grateful for those challenges, to bring me to this higher expression, to refine me. We're all in God's forge being refined by this really intense heat. But there needs to be intense heat in order to produce the most beautiful tool, the most beautiful ornate structure that has to be hot to make us malleable, to make us able to be changed, to grow into that beautiful tool so that God can wield us and use us in that way and in the most effective form. So being grateful for the heat and the challenges because it molds me and creates the being who I am today. And if I can embody that in every moment, then I never lose.
Yeah. I want to say, like, maybe it's maybe to embody this in every moment is a little bit tricky, because we still go up and down. It's not something that we can always take control over. But yeah, still, like, just going back, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, going back to this awareness, and yeah, just going back to the state of awareness where we we actually get to breathe, we get to, you know, just calm ourselves down, take a breath, and do something that is going to make us go back into peace and calmness, then we can actually be grateful for the hardships that we're going through. And yeah, like sometimes I am going to cry, like, why am I going through this? You know, why do I need to deal with this shit? You know, it's like it happens. Even though
Yeah.
you know that it's for a greater cause and you are going to learn something from it, it's like at the same moment, it's, you know, I don't know. It's just
Yeah, no, you said it well. I mean, it's important that we let ourselves feel the fullest feelings that we have because of everything that's happening. Don't try and shame ourselves or think, oh man, because Justin said I should be grateful and I'm not grateful in this moment, I'm somehow doing something wrong. Like, no, we feel the fullest expression. And what I like to do when I find myself in those moments of just feeling down or feeling upset or whatever, I come back to when I'm ready, after I've gone through the range of the emotion, the wave that I need to ride. I come back to like, man, you got me. The experience got me, and
yeah.
and it got me, and it got me good, and that's okay. And it's kind of like, oh, you got me, but in a joking way of it's sort of can be a comical experience, and then it comes back to the laughter of like, oh man, okay, I stubbed my toe, it hurt really bad, but now I know to pick up my feet so I don't stub my toe anymore. And so I can be grateful for that. And so, yeah, whatever process that we need to go through in order to get to that point, that's the transmutational alchemizing process. So we are the alchemist transmuting lead, which is those sort of perceivedly shitty experiences or any experience, transmuting that lead into gold to take it the full range. And so whatever process we need to go through in order to transmute that substance into the higher, we go through that, always bringing it back to that state of gratitude is the end point. But yeah, it is a process to get there. It's not immediate. It's not something that we can always do in all moments, of course. It's just it's a worthy goal to strive for. And then yeah, just enjoying the process along the way.
Yeah. Do you also notice that there are certain things like that you get to not experience or you get to put inside of your body or to not put inside of your body? Like for an example, if I don't go outside to the sun or being next to a tree or just experience nature and fresh air, sometimes I found that I'm a bit more tired and a bit more irritated, and I don't have the energy to deal with everyone I meet along the way, and I can be more irritated, right? Or if I've eaten something that is a bit more heavy than what I'm used to eat and didn't make me feel my best, so I also feel like, oh man, it's just, why did I do that? Because now I can be much calmer, like you already know the process of. And yeah, do you also feel like how does it shift? How does it affect your
Yeah, so it's like a it is this continual learning experience where we recognize the effects that so everything in creation is cause and effect. It's not this just linear time happenstance kind of thing. It's cause and effect. So I am the cause as the conscious co-creator of this experience. I am the cause by my internal reality, by my choices that I make. I am the cause, and then I experience the effects. So to change those effects, if I find an effect that is unpleasant, as you mentioned, eating something and you don't feel as well, or not going outside and not feeling that rejuvenating effect of feeling nature and feeling that grounded effect, then I can go back to the cause. And it's like, okay, well, the cause here was I ate this, or the cause here was I chose to spend all day inside sitting. So how can I change that in order to experience the effects that I would like? And so not beating ourselves up for that process, Like if we eat something that is not as desirable or doesn't produce that effect, I don't need to beat myself up in shame to say, why did you do this? This is horrible, all these other sorts of things, but just see it. Okay, I did this. I had this cause. I experienced this effect. I don't really like how this feels. So maybe next time I'll choose a different cause to lead to a more desired effect. Um, and that's stepping back into a conscious space in all moments, to where I'm not just being guided by the unconscious, unaware kind of like robotic way of being, where I'm just walking from point A to point B. I'm seeing an advertisement. I'm buying that shit, buying that food. I'm spending all time indoors on social media and never going outside. I don't even really know why I don't feel poorly, because I don't ever pay attention to what are the causes here. So that's the reclaiming of the conscious awareness, is just identifying the causes to lead to the more pleasant, more desirable effects. And that's how creation teaches us as well. It's like that feeling that you get from eating a heavier, dense, more cooked food or something like that, and then experiencing that effect afterwards. That's karma. It's karma, which is not a bad thing. It's not punishing you. It's just to remind you, like, hey, this isn't really wired for your body. Your body's not going to feel as good when you eat this. Here's an effect, so that you have a reminder to come back to the higher forms of nourishment, so that you can step into a higher form of you. And so that's all there to gently nudge us back into that. And if we ignore that, then it geds worse. Perceivably worse might not even be the word for it, but it gets to the point where it's more noticeable, and then that turns into disease. It turns into cancer and whatever else, because we've just ignored that effect, and we haven't changed the cause. We haven't examined the root cause all along. So that's, again, staying in a hellish experience when we are the victim and we don't even pay attention to what's happening and why it might be happening. Whereas a heaven-based reality is, I am responsible for this. I'm responsible for what's happening. I'm responsible for my environment. I'm responsible for my inputs. And I have to make those conscious decisions to change that. I have to, but also not beat myself up for making the wrong choice, because that can be detrimental as well. If I'm overly criticizing of myself for not doing this, or I have people have like meditation practices and they'll do that, but then they'll beat themselves up if they don't have a day where they do this. And it's like, well, you didn't do the meditation practice to beat yourself up. You did it because you enjoyed the effect of what it brought you to. Not to create some mental construct that you have to do this in order to be well. You do this because it feels good to do this. But as soon as we start to criticize ourselves or put ourselves into shame because we don't do something or eat something that maybe isn't in alignment with us, and then we shame ourselves because of doing that, we're compounding that effect tremendously. So now it's not only just the physical effects of not doing that, or eating something that doesn't align with us, but it's the mental anguish that we put ourselves through, beating ourselves up for not having that as well. So be gentle. We're gentle in our approach. We're gentle in how we pursue things, and gentle with ourselves, and how we move about, and trust that it's all perfect. If I need to have a learning experience of eating something that doesn't feel good, to have one more marker in my story to say, I don't like how this feels. I'll give a personal example. I went to Italy recently, and I thought, you know what? Everyone always talks about the pasta there and talks about how good that is. You know what? I haven't had pasta in years, but let's see how it feels. I ate some and I immediately got sick, and I was like, this is awful. This is terrible. I don't like this feeling. So but I didn't beat myself up for the experience. I was like, yeah, I enjoyed the moments I was eating that stuff. It tasted good. The effects afterward lasted for days. Is that worth it? No, not at all. It's not worth it. But I needed to have that experience to really know, like, do I want to have this experience any longer? If I spent all this time beating myself up for that experience, it's just going to compound that effect. So just to be gentle with ourselves, and recognize what's happening for us all around us, is just signals to give us and to help move us into that space of higher alignment. Am I hearing that harmonious song? Does it sound good? Does it sound pleasant? Or does it sound all discordant and chaotic? If it does, then I just need to shift some things. I need to tune a few instruments. I need to sing a little bit better, or whatever the case may be, so that I can get back to that higher harmony. And that's the name of the game.
Yeah. And I was also asking, like, if you feel that because of this way that our body feels, from the inside, do you feel that you struggle more to be more patient towards other people? And then what I was actually saying is that I feel like I have no patience for people, because I'm saying, why did I eat this? Because now I cannot, be as calm with people, because I don't feel comfortable within myself. It's not because I'm punishing myself for doing this. It's just because, most of the time I also try to be the healthiest version of me, so I can, you know, be able to always be my best towards other people, to always have the energy and to always have the time, because I won't be focused on how bad I actually feel, physically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a huge variance when I step into that, because if my song is discordant, if it's chaotic, and if I'm not harmonizing with myself and my body and my mind, and all of that's erratic and all over the place, then how on earth am I going to possibly be able to connect with someone else in a way that's not inducing of the same? So that's why you have this sort of in families and social groups and wherever, you have just continuous drama and problems and trauma and things that come up, because everyone is so chaotic within their own space, and then they rub up against other people, and that chaos just continues to flow and continues to erupt. So yeah, I notice that very clearly within myself when I'm not in that space of balance. And again, that's taking responsibility for my own sovereignty and saying, you know what, I'm not in a balanced space right now. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go put my bare feet on the ground. I'm going to go feel the sun on my skin. I'm going to go breathe for a moment. I'm going to go, whatever the case may be, to recalibrate myself so that I can better prepare myself. That's taking responsibility of sequestering myself away until I'm ready to create those connections again. Whereas most people don't even know what that's like, and don't even really have any sense of doing that. So it's just continual chaos, left and right, every which direction. So yeah, just stepping back into conscious awareness and taking responsibility is huge.
And just out of curiosity, do you feel like you also had this, um, intuition of doing these things, like, going for a walk or being outside, or you felt like you hear stories about your childhood that you might have been more connected to how the world, how you should be interacting with the world, as in like walking maybe barefoot, or the grounding, being outside, I don't know, just
Eh, I mean, it's certainly something that's evolved over time. I've always loved nature, and I've always loved being outside. So and I know that I was drawn to that in so many ways. And I've been a fairly peaceful person in all of my circles within my life. So um, I do feel like I have a more natural sense of finding that peace within, regardless. And I have no problem. I've never had any problem stepping away from a situation or a relationship or somebody who's just like creating more issues. I'm like, I don't really need that in my space or my field, whether that's just for a momentary thing to let ourselves cool off, or for a longer term thing. Yeah, I've always been sort of naturally inclined in that, but it's certainly been something that's developed much more over time. And certainly embarking on the food journey and the spiritual journeys and things of that nature have really helped me to see that much more clearly as time has passed.
yeah, that's interesting, because I see that, when I've always used to observe other people, and whenever I saw kids, I just used to see how carefree they are. They just don't care about anything, and they're just enjoying everything. They're trying to find playfulness in everything. For them, everything can be fun, if if you let them have the space and take off all the energies that they have so much energy because they're, they're still pure. They're not they're not ruined by all of this. They're just not influenced as much as we are. They don't have patience inside of their head, or someone telling them, oh, you cannot do this, or it's bad to walk outside, or I don't know, like all these things. Or I think that also a part of us losing our faith is just because people are so scared. They tell us to, pay attention to, you might get hurt, or you might do this. And I think that eventually it also hurts the experience of one that wants to try something and maybe has a block because he thinks that everything in life is just going to hurt him if it's not as safe as everything else is portrayed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, you hit it. That's why children are such a perfect representation of that childlike wonder and that innocence that we can embody, and to truly see through the eyes of a child in all moments, and have that celebration of life, and have that wonder. The first time that we saw a tree or played in the grass or whatever the case may be, like we loved that. We loved that experience. We would immerse ourselves in this whole world of magic and wonder. And then somewhere along the way, that was beaten out of us, both mentally, sometimes physically, spiritually. It was rid of us within our system, and that's why society is crafted in the way that it is. It's quite sadistic in that sense of traumatizing the child every step of the way, so that it loses that sense of wonder. It loses that innate sense of spiritual connection with everything around. And that's how we're conditioned in the ways that we are. So we go from the moment that we're born, where we're yanked out of the womb, injected with all sorts of poisons, we're thrown on like a cold operating table under bright lights, we're taken away from our mother, our umbilical cord is cut far too early. All of these, and for boys especially, to have the genital mutilation occur at that time, like all of that is extremely traumatic in that moment. And then from there it just gets, I mean, worse. Really, it just continues. Like you've got a family, our parents, God bless them, they're doing their best, but they are so full of trauma themselves. They're running around in a world trying to make money, to survive, to have enough time to build connection, to not create drama and stress and trauma in the home. But it naturally bleeds into this space because they're watching the news and all these other sorts of problems that are continually occurring. And then we go into the school system, where that's just beaten into us continuously, that you don't have any creative thoughts. You need to sit in this chair for an unusually long period of time and listen to nonsense that's all full of lies and garbage, and just be told this continual lie that you are not worthy, you are not enough, you are a worthless sinner by the religions, you are just an evolved piece of pond scum, an evolved monkey told by the science people. And all of that's just to beat this into your head that you are nothing, and you will never amount to anything unless you make money. So worship the almighty dollar. Don't worship the creator, worship the almighty dollar, and just abandon everything else. And so that just slippery slope gets more slippery as we fall into that reality. And then soon enough we become the ones that think that that's just the way that it has to be, and that's the way it's always been. And so then we have kids ourselves, and we do it to our own children, and the system continues. So somewhere along the way, we've got to say enough of this. I'm not doing this any longer. I'm not playing that game any longer. I want to let children be children. We don't need to be teaching them in these indoctrination camps. We need to be letting them learn on their own. Let nature teach them. Let the environment, let the social interactions, let the connections teach them, and let them learn in the ways that they're wired to learn, because they're brilliant. They're brilliant. They have this deep connection with the divine until we get in the way. So stop getting in the way and let them teach us, let them help us rekindle our relationship with this divine creator. And yeah, it's just all upside down. Everything has been inverted, everything's been twisted. And so to fix it, we just have to flip it right back on its head.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Wow. Um, yeah, and there was something else I wanted to mention, and I think I also forgot that. Sometimes when I listen to people, I lose my train of thought because I get so into like listening, and sometimes I just lose whatever I wanted to say. Um, yeah, so I think, oh, I've heard a lot of the times that when when the soul is coming inside of the physical body and it's still in the mother's womb, then it gets all the knowledge that it needs to have. And then once we are going out from our mother's womb, this is when we actually starting to forget everything that we already knew when we were already in the mother's womb. So it might be a good opportunity for us to actually experience life as a way to rewire and actually relearn what we already knew.
Yeah. I mean, we're
Did you
not
happen to
learning.
hear about this?
Yes, absolutely. We're not learning anything new. We're just remembering. We came from, prior to this physical experience, we incarnated from that divine knowing where all is connected, and we are connected to, some people term it the Akashic records, which is the God's consciousness. It's the complete knowledge. So we have access to this, and we still have access to this. We're able to tap into this, but our ability to receive this dwindles because of societal conditions. So yes, as a newborn, to create, to help and support a child in retaining this awareness and this connection, is only going to allow them to step into this incarnation in a much more beautiful sense, where they're not having to forget all of it. There is a layer of forgetfulness in just the sense of, it adds to the challenge of this experience, but we don't have to forget our connection. We don't have to forget that we have access to this at all times. There is nothing that we don't know. We simply forgot. We simply have forgotten that. So it's just rewiring, remembering, relearning all of this every step of the way.
Beautifully said. Yeah. So you also see as basically children are a reminder of ourselves. So once we bring a child into the world, we're actually bringing ourselves in a different form. We are creating someone that is our own self, but is going to probably be just a reflection of ours, and maybe an improved version of what we need to deal with, like things that we've been not wanting to deal with as before we had the child, and now we have to do it through the child itself. I feel like this is why maybe sometimes the children get to carry a lot of the burden if it happens in what you said before, is that the parents bring the energy and all of the things that happen outside, and they don't want to bring it in, but it just the child has to absorb everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They are profound reminders of our divinity. And yeah, we need to be learning from them. We need to be taking a step back from trying to teach all the time as if they have something to learn, and really learn from them. They have everything to teach us. We might have wisdom from experience of doing things in the physical environment. Of course, we can help them learn that yes, a stove is hot, or like whatever the case may be. These simple things we can teach them in that sense. But the larger, more spiritual connections, they have everything. They have everything, and we have forgotten. So we need to be learning from them.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything you would maybe want to add on this topic?
Well, we covered a lot today, and it was a beautiful conversation. So I would just say, if any of this feels overwhelming to you, if any of this feels like it's too much, don't worry about getting it all or it all making sense or having to see every bit of this experience from every. Just know that the whole point of this experience is to express in our highest form. So we're here to like step into the physical environment and relearn who we are, relearn that we are these perfect embodiments of divinity, and then step into that highest expression. So just go through that and without needing to do anything, just go through that in a sense of like opening myself up to whatever unfolds in front of me. And um, yeah, just enjoy the process. We're here to have fun. We're here to explore. We're here to dance. We're here to play. We're here to sing. We're here to have fun. So don't take this too seriously. We take this, sometimes we're wired, of course, we're wired to take this too seriously and pretend that it's end all be all and that's all it has to be. But really, we're here to have fun. We're here to express. We're here to augment our creative abilities and find that passion within to show up and share in the ways that we're called to. So yeah, just just have fun, enjoy this. And that's all I'd leave with.
Thank you so, so much for these beautiful words. Thank you for the wisdom. And yeah, it's been a beautiful, beautiful conversation. And I'll see you. Um, I think, yeah, I'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you, Yasmin. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.